After a great deal of aerial reconnaissance, Jones the Jet had found a damsel in distress. Only one problem remained. Who or what was distressing her, and how would Sir Tumbleweed get rid of it? "Probably one of my English cousins," said Jones the Jet. "Useful dragons in their way, though not a patch on us Welsh. This damsel," Sir Tumbleweed said, "she was beautiful, was she?" "I don't know," said the dragon. "It was dark. Anyway, with dragons, it's easy to see who's good-looking and who's ugly. You look at me now." And they looked at him and wondered. "And look you, boyo," said the dragon. "You can drop the mister if you want to. To my pals, I'm Taffy, see? Now, I better show you a direct route to your damsel. Straight line, see? Shortest distance between 2 points, like. I'll blaze a trail for you to follow by flying really low, see? Hedge hopping, we call it. And every so often, I'll switch on my ignition, burning a spot on the ground beneath me to keep you on course." The scheme worked well. Arthur the Lion padded ahead, his good nose telling him of charred twigs or burnt grass, and Spearhead followed, carrying Sir Tumbleweed. Up hill and down dale they went, straight as a die, across the rolling countryside. But all the time Sir Tumbleweed's mind was full of the damsel ahead. He could picture her perfectly. She would be tall, with grey eyes, her hair would be smooth and golden and very long, and her cheeks would be exquisitely pale. Sir Tumbleweed was riding lost in thought, as usual, when Spearhead stopped. Arthur the Lion was loping back towards them. "I think we've arrived, Tummy," he said. "At the lower end of this valley there's a castle. It's getting too dark to see clearly, but I can hear a voice calling." "A female voice, Arthur?" "Yes." "Oh, goody, goody." Ahead they could make out the shape of a castle's battlements. One specially tall turret stood black against the sky, and from it they could hear the cries for help. There was just enough light left to see a shape sprawled before the castle gates. "Oh, look," said Sir Tumbleweed. "There's good old Mr. Jones waiting for us." As he neared the shadowy form, he thought it might be rather fun to creep up on Taffy Jones and make him jump. He tiptoed forward, and when he reached the dragon's tail, he drew his sword. Prodding the tail with the tip of the blade, Sir Tumbleweed cried, "Boo!" There was no volcanic eruption. Instead, the dragon rose to its feet very slowly and turned round to face him. "Hello, Taffy," said the knight cheerily. "It's me, Tummy. We've arrived. Come and have something to eat." The voice that replied from the darkness was a very deep bass voice with no hint of a Welsh accent.
"Something to eat,"
it said very slowly.
"It appears to me that supper is already served."
By now a full moon had risen, and by its brilliant light Sir Tumbleweed could see that this dragon was much like Mr. Jones to look at, save for its colour, which was green. Sir Tumbleweed's immediate and almost overpowering instinct was to run for it, as fast as his long legs would carry him. But just at that instant there came another heart-rending cry for help from the turret high above. The sound of the cry, coupled with the certainty that he would be fried the moment he turned to flee, decided him not to. He thought fast. This dragon, from the slowness of its speech and movement, sounded pretty thick. He must play for time. "So you eat people, do you?" he said in light conversational tone. "Frightfully bad for you, you know." For a moment there was no reply. The dragon looked puzzled, and then it said,
"Why?"
"Oh, rots your teeth," said Sir Tumbleweed, "and gives you awfully bad breath." The green dragon thought about this for a while, and then it said,
"I only eat the best people."
This was patently true. The evidence was plain to see. The moonlight glinted on swords and maces and battle-axes, on lances and plumed helmets, and on emblazoned shields, the last relics of long-digested knights. "The best people," Sir Tumbleweed said, "are the worst for your teeth. Chewing up all that armour ruins them."
"Is that so? All the more reason, then, to eat you. You've got no armour."
And it opened its mouth wide. Afterwards, looking back on that desperate moment, Sir Tumbleweed found it hard to believe that he, the nervous knight, could ever have acted with such coolness, with such decision, with such speed. At death's door alone, with no hope of help from his friends, at last he found that precious gift for which he had always longed for, true courage. Moving like lightning, all his clumsiness forgotten, he snatched up a lance from the ground and thrust it into the dragon's gaping mouth, setting it upright between the upper and lower jaw to prop them open. Then he grabbed a round shield and jammed it into the monster's throat. There it lodged, a steel fire door to protect him from the furnace within, and not a moment too soon. To the sound of a terrible internal roaring and rumbling, the metal began to change colour, first to a dull, then to a brilliant red, as the dragon tried vainly to blast the knight, until at last its slow brain registered the pain in his throat, and Turning clumsily, it waddled into the moat and stuck its head under. Fortune favours the brave, they say. And it was Sir Tumbleweed's good luck that here now was a live bridge over which to cross the water. Nimbly, he climbed upon the dragon's back and scampered along it. Acrobatically, he shinned up the wall. Gymnastically, he balanced on the very topmost edge of the raised drawbridge. Immediately below, the dragon raised its dripping head. Somehow, it had got rid of both lance and shield, and it stared at him with eyes that blazed with murderous hate.
Someone,
it said in its slow, deep voice,
is going to die.
"Bags, it's you!" shouted Sir Tumbleweed, and with 2 swift blows he cut through the mighty chains that held up the drawbridge. Sir Tumbleweed jumped clear. Then, with a tremendous shattering crash, the whole massive structure came slamming down. When the echoes of its fall had died away, Sir Tumbleweed could see no sign of his adversary, save for the tip of its tail, which stuck out beneath the far end of the drawbridge. Feebly, the tail tip twitched, once, twice, 3 times, and then it was still. Sir Tumbleweed scrambled down the wall and into the castle. Within was a spiral staircase, and up the stone steps he ran, 3 at a time. He felt supremely happy. At last he had come to the end of his quest. He had won a tournament, he had defeated a dragon, and in a few moments he would rescue a damsel in distress. He felt like singing, but he refrained, partly because he remembered his promise to Mr. Jones, and partly because he was out of breath. Puffing and blowing, Sir Tumbleweed reached the top of the staircase. In the door before him there was a small grille, through which peered a pair of eyes. "Grey eyes," thought Sir Tumbleweed excitedly. "Oh, my favourite colour. I bet everything about her will be just as I imagined. Stand back, fair lady," he panted. "I'll have that door down in a jiffy." "Save your strength, Sir Knight," said a voice within, a low, pleasant voice. It was oddly familiar to Sir Tumbleweed's ears. "The door is locked and bolted upon the outer side." Sir Tumbleweed struggled with the great iron key and the 2 heavy bolts. And then the door swung open, and a shaft of moonlight flooded the chamber within. In its glow there stood a figure all dressed in black. It wore a tall black hat upon its head and a long black cloak. A black scarf hid most of its face. "You!" gasped the knight. "Me," replied the witch. "But you're not a damsel." "Oh, yes, I am. A damsel is a young, unmarried woman. I am not wed." "But you're not in distress." "Oh, yes, I am, and have been since my christening, in fact." "Oh, no," said Sir Tumbleweed. "Don't tell me it's one of those fairy stories about christenings where there's a wicked godmother who puts a curse on the child." "It is," said the witch, "and she did. She gave me a most unwelcome gift." "What was it?" "This," said the witch, and she threw aside the black scarf. Everyone knows what sort of face a witch is supposed to have. Everyone knows about the lank hair and the leathery skin, about the thin lips and the nose that curves to meet the pointed chin. This face had all, and try as he would, Sir Tumbleweed could not repress a shudder. "How do I look?" said the witch dryly. "It's like a witch," stammered Sir Tumbleweed. There was nothing else he could think of to say. "Which is what I became, Sir Knight, when I grew up. There was nothing else I could think of to do." "But there's always a fairy godmother in these stories," said Sir Tumbleweed. "Yes," said the witch, "there was. She had foretold that one day I would meet a man who would restore my beauty, a good man, a kindly man, a brave man, the bravest of the brave. And I have met him." "Me?" said the knight. "You," said the witch. "You, Sir Tumbleweed, champion of all England, slayer of the great green dragon, you can deliver me from my distress, by one last act of courage, if you will." "Of course I will," cried Sir Tumbleweed. "What must I do?" "You must give me something." "Anything, anything at all. What is it that I must give you?" "A kiss." Sir Tumbleweed's brain whirled. "I'd sooner fight a dozen dragons or 100 knights," he thought wildly, "than kiss that frightful ugly mug." The witch moved a step towards him. "Faint heart," she said quietly, "ne'er won fair lady," and she raised that awful face to his. "Please," she said, and in the grey eyes was such a look of pleading, a look that Sir Tumbleweed's knightly courtesy could not withstand. He shut his eyes tight and, bending forward, aimed a peck at one cheek. A shudder of disgust ran through him as he felt beneath his lips the leathery skin. But at that instant the cheek became soft as the skin of a ripe peach. Sir Tumbleweed stepped back in amazement. Before him, dressed in a silken gown of forget-me-not blue and a velvet cloak of primrose yellow, stood a girl. She was not the damsel of his dreams. Her hair was not long and golden and smooth, but short and brown and curly. Instantly the picture of that cool blonde dream girl vanished from Sir Tumbleweed's mind, never to return. "Oh," he gasped, "you do look nice." Then he gulped. I don't suppose," he said, "that you would consider marrying a nervous knight, would you?" "No, Tummy dear," said the pretty lady, "I wouldn't. But I'll certainly marry you." Jones the Jet flew in next morning. The sun was shining, the skies were cloudless, and the birds were singing their heads off. "Taffy!" cried Sir Tumbleweed. "Great news!" "Don't tell me, boyo," said Mr. Jones. "Let me guess, you've killed one of my cousins." "Oh, crumbs," said the knight. "I hadn't thought of it like that." "Think no more of it," said Taffy. "Stupidest of all the English branch of the family. I'm not saying something." "Anyway, I wasn't going to tell you that," said Sir Tumbleweed. "Guess again." The Red Dragon looked at the happy pair standing hand in hand before him, and his huge face split in a grin. "There's nice," he said softly. "There's lovely. You're going to be married." And married they were before the year was many days older. It was a very quiet wedding. Strangely, the attendance was small, perhaps because of the smell of one of the guests. The marriage feast was a magical affair. The change in her looks had robbed Sir Tumbleweed's lady of none of her powers, and at the snap of her fingers a table appeared laden with choice food, a magnificent wedding cake and fine golden wine for the knight and his lady to drink. As the evening shadows began to fall, they sat holding hands, while around the table their full-fed friends lay silently sleeping. "What good companions they've been," said Sir Tumbleweed. "If we have a son some day, I think it would be nice to name him after one of them." "You could hardly call a boy Spearhead," said his new wife. "Or Taffy." "Oh, Arthur is a good name, though, don't you think? A noble-sounding name. After all, with a mother like you, a son of ours couldn't fail to become a great man." His grey-eyed lady looked fondly at her once nervous knight. "With a father like you," she said, "he might become the greatest of all knights. Why, he might even become a king." Sir Tumbleweed choked on his bubbly wine. "King Arthur," he spluttered. "Don't make me laugh." And then he did, very long and very loudly, so that the lion and the cat and the dragon and the unicorn all woke up. Jones the Jet yawned hugely. "What's eating you, boyo?" he said. "Nothing, I'm glad to say," said Sir Tumbleweed happily. "And talking of eating, why don't we finish off the cake?" And so they did. Goodbye.